Good evening and welcome to the Village Board meeting for the Village of Pleasantville. Today is Monday, January 28. If you're watching live on Monday, January 28, we encourage you to call in if you have comments or questions. Our call-in number is 769-1677. As always, our meetings are broadcast live on both Cablevision and Verizon Cable TV, and within a day or two you can pick up an on-demand webcast at pctv76.org. We began our meeting with a community discussion about the issues that may affect Pleasantville if New York State proceeds with their proposal to legalize marijuana. That was a lively discussion, and that's the reason, if those of you are watching at home wonder why we are late, it's because it was a lively discussion and it ran longer than hoped. So apologies for being on the late side, but any of you who are interested in the subject of the legalization of marijuana and the Pleasantville response to it, that work session was also videotaped and will be available as an on-demand webcast again at pctv76.org within a day or two. So encourage anybody who has an interest in that subject to take a look there. You can also take a look at our website, pleasantville-ny.gov, where in the news section there is a posting of the handout that we handed out tonight to those who were in the work session that includes not only government contacts and information resources on the subject of marijuana legalization and a couple of excerpts out of the state budget document, which is where the proposal to legalize currently sits. Irrational though that may be, that is the way the wheels of politics in Albany are churning at the moment. But then the most important piece is there are two draft documents included in that packet. One is a draft local law that would amend our zoning code to restrict the presence of retail stores for recreational marijuana in the event that recreational marijuana is legalized by New York State. So what we propose to do is pass a law that says if it's legalized in New York State, it would obviously be legal in the Village of Pleasantville to possess and to use it. But what we propose in this law is that it would not be legal to open a store to sell it. It is possible that the New York State legislation, if it is modeled after the legislation that currently exists in the state for alcoholic beverages, may usurp that right from us. But at least for the moment, we propose to pass that law. We have also got a resolution that's a statement of philosophy that asks the state to take a number of factors into account in the event that they proceed with legalization. So the core point about that, and I would say, having spoken to many people, and I know all of my colleagues here on the board have spoken to many people, folks on all sides of the issue, folks who believe that marijuana should be legalized, folks that believe it shouldn't, all share the concern about its availability for kids, and all share the concern that in a community as small as Pleasantville, with a tight downtown, very close to many, many kids' walking routes and to facilities focused on kids, that there isn't a good place to sell it. So that is our key focus in the next 10 weeks, during which the folks in Albany will be debating their budget proposals for us to say, we very, 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 very much want to have the right to opt out of retail sales in the Village of Pleasantville. So again, more on that at pleasantville-ny.gov, and the handout that you can download there provides not only email addresses for folks in state and local government, but also some web resources that are useful to continue the conversation. And as always, we refer you to the Pleasantville Strong website, which is pleasantvillestrong.org, our local community coalition associated with efforts to reduce substance abuse and addiction here in the Village of Pleasantville. So a couple of other announcements to make. We are soon to be in our village budget season as we start to work on the budget for the fiscal year that begins June 1. And I know Eric Morrissey and Noreen Regan and the folks in the finance department are reaching out to department heads and beginning to build that. Fair to say that, as has been the case in recent years, the state's imposed 2% cap on an increase in our tax levy implies that all communities could always restrict the increase in spending to 2%. That is an extremely difficult thing to do in a circumstance where healthcare costs, union contracts, and insurance costs are all frequently exceeding 2%. So one of the items that's on the agenda in Albany as well is to make the 2% tax cap permanent. I certainly wouldn't be one to argue that it hasn't had its positive effects, but I certainly am one to argue that if you put a 2% tax cap on the growth of budgets in all of New York's municipalities, and if you include capital costs in that tax cap, which is the case for us, you create a powerful incentive for communities to kick the can down the road, not to maintain their own infrastructure, and not to spend in the ways that will deliver to the next generation a community that's in good shape. So more on that. Sorry for that little soapbox, but there I stand. I'll be in Albany in a couple of weeks at the New York Conference of Mayors Legislative Conference, and am also the chair of the Westchester Municipal Officials Association Legislative Committee, and we will be banging on doors in Albany to talk about the marijuana issues as they affect Pleasantville, as well as a bunch of other issues, and we encourage anybody who would help weigh in on that to download the packet I just mentioned and to email their representatives and the leadership of the Senate and the Assembly. Anybody else have some announcements to make? Okay. The next item on our agenda is to discuss the Manville Road corridor improvements and the Civic Space project. That will be a continuation of a public hearing we began 2 weeks ago. But before we have a motion to open the public hearing and engage comments from all of you, that will be on the record, Nicole Asquith has put together some materials to help present some of the aspects of our project, and we will start with that. Thank you, Nicole.
Thanks. This is a little bit awkward. Hold on a moment.
You want to turn around?
You guys want to hit the lights?
Okay. All right. Am I blocking the view of the screen? Okay. All right.
Oh, you're
no.
good.
All right. Okay. So I see some familiar faces here, including some people who were here for the opening of the public hearing, and some new faces. So the presentation this week will be relatively brief, but I wanted to introduce those of you who are not yet familiar with the projects and highlight a couple of areas for those of you who are already more familiar. Just to put this in context, we're in the middle of a public hearing as part of our SECRA process. I was explaining this on the phone to a friend, and she paused and she said, "Could you explain to me why it's a secret process?" So I had to explain that it actually stands for the State Environmental Quality Review. And so there are a number of pieces to that, which is one of the reasons that it's sort of a drawn-out process. I will first sort of briefly show you the design for the two pieces of these separate but interlocking projects that, because of the way the SECRA process works, we're considering together for this phase. And then I'm going to focus on a couple of particular aspects. So this, I don't know how clearly you can see it from here, but this is the Manville corridor portion of it, for which we are benefiting from a federal grant that is administered by the state DOT and that is specifically designed to improve pedestrian safety. And there are a number of features of that, as you can see, including changing the angle of the crosswalks, putting a medium strip in certain areas, and bumping out the corners to make the transition for the pedestrians safer. Wait a minute, did I just go backwards? Sorry. Maybe I could just use the arrows. Yeah, here we go. That's another image. And then one of the consequences of that is that we're going to be closing off the what we refer to sometimes as the slip lane, but the cross through the parking lot that people take advantage of to go onto Manville Road. And that creates an opportunity for us to create a civic space, which is something that, as the mayor stated last time, has been under consideration for decades at this point in one version or another. I found one of the things I did when I was putting together my presentation, one fiddles around on the internet, is to look online, and I found some lovely old pictures of Pleasantville. This one, I think the pedestrians are superimposed. I think they're not genuine ones. But just to remind everyone that the walking aspect of Pleasantville is such an essential part of our identity and essential part of who we are as a community. And it really facilitates the kind of closeness that we have as a community that I think sets us apart in a lot of ways. And so it's very much in the spirit of improving and reinforcing that aspect that these two projects are taking space, and particularly the Manville Road portion of it. So first, I'm going to talk about two things in particular. I'm going to talk about parking briefly, and that's in part to anticipate our next meeting. And then I'm going to focus on the civic space a little bit and talk a little bit about the uses of the civic space, because I feel like that was underemphasized in our last meeting. So I'm just going to sort of glaze over the parking a little bit, because we've hired BFG Planning to do a review of the parking, and so they're going to give us a very detailed account at the next meeting, and I would encourage anybody who's concerned about that to attend that meeting. But having, again, sort of spent some time on the internet today, I know that there are a lot of concerns about parking, and I think that there's some sense that the village is not doing enough to address that, or somehow that this project is being undertaken without fully taking into account the impact. And indeed, we will be losing a certain number of spaces in Memorial Plaza in building the civic space. But I want to reassure people that we are very much engaged with the question of parking. In fact, I would say at every meeting there's some facet of it that we're discussing at this point. So just a few things that I can tell you. So as the mayor mentioned last time, we recently purchased a new parking lot across from Southern Table with 18 parking spots. Those are currently designated for 12-hour meters in this kind of transitional period, but could be transitioned to commuter parking. There are a number of other potential opportunities that we're pursuing right now, including possibly some kind of partnership with 70 Memorial Plaza, where there's going to be most likely will be an underground parking garage. That project is currently under planning, and so none of this is finalized, but we are also in negotiations with them about recuperating spots there, as well as in a number of places around the village. And it's possible that those two things in themselves will recuperate the spots that we're losing in Memorial Plaza. But we're also looking at how parking works throughout the village. And I would say that from my perspective, it seems to me that this has served as a catalyst for really rethinking how parking works village-wide. And we've noticed a number of sort of inefficiencies in the way that it works. So for instance, we mentioned last time that the farmers market, when it sets up shop on Saturday morning, there are often a number of spots that are already occupied at 5 o'clock in the morning because of people who leave their cars there over the weekend. And those are spots that are not available for people who want to shop within the village. Another thing that a neighbor recently was talking to me about is all of the places where people essentially find free parking to commute into the city, whether it's along Tompkins or even higher up near BRS, for instance. And so, there's a laundry list of things like that I think we need to consider. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see what BFJ has to say about who uses parking how in the village. And so I think that this is actually going to open up an opportunity for us to get more out of our parking. Okay, so now I'm going to turn quickly to the Pleasantville civic space. So this kind of word puzzle you see on the page was the result of a number of community meetings that we hosted, in which people gave us feedback about what kind of activities they would like to see happen there. And I wanted to stress, because one thing I've been seeing in the descriptions of it, and somebody said we need a new word for it. It's true that civic space is not the sexiest word. So if anybody has a great idea for how to rebrand it, let me know. But I've heard it referred to as a green space and other things, and a park. And there's a kind of awkwardness there, because in fact, it's not really a park in the sort of generic suburban or even urban sense, it's, at least I think of it more as an outdoor community space, or even a series of outdoor rooms that are designed for activities, the way that a building that was a community space would be designed for different activities. So here's the design. So with respect to the different rooms, there's the lawn, the plaza, the bosque, and the porch. And I'm just going to briefly highlight them and then talk about how we're thinking about the activities at this point. But I would also encourage people to make suggestions because this is all still in the planning process. So this is one of my images for the plaza. So a plaza, you know, the designer chooses all these words very deliberately, right? A plaza conjures up public spaces all over the world. This one's in Copenhagen. Here's another one in San Francisco. You know, it's a place to hang out, to see and to be seen, to drink a cup of coffee, to read a book, where children can play around. Then there's the porch. And of course, I don't need to tell you. Oh, wait, sorry. This is the bosque, so I'll jump to the bosque first. So a bosque might seem like a funny word. It means a forest or a wood. It's a feature has been a feature of landscaping going back to the Italian Renaissance, and it's sort of a formal recreation of a wood, right? So it provides some shade. It's a little bit more private. It's conducive maybe to meeting one of your friends on a weekday and, you know, catching up on what's happening with them and so on. Here's another. I thought that was kind of a fun picture. It's from Vienna, of another bosque. There's one of our more impressive porches in Pleasantville. I don't need to tell you what porches are you know, good for, because I certainly see lots of porches being put to good use around Pleasantville. But I think it was not by accident that quintessential feature of Pleasantville life was marked as one of the spaces for the civic space. That has a kind of intimacy of it to it. It has this sense of, you know, watching all of the people going by, all of the life and the activity and so on. And finally, the lawn. And I just, I thought yoga, why not? Who knows, right? So a lawn obviously is a softer space. It's a place for kids to run around, for adults to lounge, picnic perhaps, but also will be conducive to certain events, such as the event that we see pictured here. So I've talked about the more casual uses that these spaces will invite, but in addition to that, the idea is to have programming. And this is something that we're talking about going forward with the Recreation Department, and also hopefully in conjunction with other groups and organizations throughout the village. So I'm going to run through some slides that Phil Myrick put together. This was during the sort of community output stage of different ideas that people had of what kinds of things could happen in these spaces. So I've somewhat mangled his slides, but this is his vision of the kinds of activities that could happen on a weekday afternoon, on a weekday evening, on weekend days. Obviously on Saturday it would be the farmer's market, and on weekend evenings. And then finally, these are a couple of examples of seasonal events. Now, to realize these kinds of things, what we want to do, of course, is to connect with all the exciting cultural activities that are already taking place throughout Pleasantville. You know, I'm always joking with fellow parents about how it's just constant fun for our kids. And to be honest, it's pretty fun for adults as well, because there are always exciting things going on. And so the initial blueprint for a civic space like this is going to be the kinds of events that already take place. So for instance, Pleasantville Day, or the Halloween Parade, which is one of my favorite moments in the year, or the Firefighters Parade, or of course the Farmers Market is in some ways the quintessential activity that really inspires this space. And we need to reach out to all of the different cultural groups that may provide things. So there are other things that I could have put here. You can see if you can spot everything here. I've got our latest cultural edition, the Grit Ninja, opening. I've got some guys playing cornhole at the top there. Of course, Will Shorts and the Westchester Table Tennis Center. Some music outside of the library, the Jacob Burns, the dance studios that we have here, ARC stages, and so on. So the idea is to really reach out and partner with all of these different cultural groups to organize activities that will bring people in and to make this cultural space more lively. Okay, so briefly, I just wanted to show a couple of examples. So movie night. This is a design. This was an earlier iteration of the Civic space of how the space could lend itself to a movie night, for instance. And another example that Phil Meyerlich thought up was a winter festival. So this is one version of how it might be laid out with a pop-up ice skating rink and an area where you could buy hot chocolate and so on. And you can imagine all kinds of scenarios. So finally, to close, I was looking at older pictures of Memorial Plaza to see how it's changed over time. And obviously, we're a long way from the days of the horse and buggy. That first slide is from 1907. Shout out to the people from the you know you're from Pleasantville if Facebook folks, where I found some of these pictures. But there are certain elements to me that are consistent, sort of our sense of community, the fact that we know each other because we're a walking village and we encounter each other, whether it's at the schools or the library or the pool. It's always these civic spaces, though, where we're encountering each other and we get to know each other. And so finally, I just wanted to show, this is an aerial photograph from 1925 of Pleasantville before the sawmill was built, before a lot of our main roads were built. And that X you see in the middle is the intersection of Bedford Road and the railroad tracks. And if you look at Google Maps, I had to tilt it, and of course there are far more roads, but that X is still essentially at the heart of Pleasantville. And that is also one of the things that makes Pleasantville unique, right? That we really have this heart. We're not a suburban sprawl in any way. And so when there are questions about, well, why put the civic space there? That, in my view, is the answer to why we put the civic space there, because it's the beating heart of the village, and we want to collect that energy there. So thanks for listening to me prattle on, and we're eager to hear what you have to say.
So thank you for that, Nicole. Really helpful to remind people of how we got here and what we've been thinking about. One of the points that I thought of as Nicole was talking was to remind folks that our longtime superintendent of recreation, Linda Bellafato, has recently retired, and we are in the final stretch of a recruitment and review process, an interview process, and we'll soon be naming a new superintendent of recreation, and anticipate having that news within the next couple of weeks for all of you. And in the course of our interviews, all of these subjects have been a point of discussion, which is to say, whoever ends up in that post will have some significant responsibility for the ways in which we might use this space at the point at which it's built. So, with that in mind, is there a motion to reopen a continuation of the public hearing regarding the Manville Road Corridor and Memorial Plaza Civic Space projects?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Welcome to a continuation of this public hearing. As Nicole mentioned, we have engaged BFJ Planning to do a parking analysis for us, and when we met the last time, it was our thought that we might have that available for a presentation by BFJ tonight. As it developed, that will have to be delayed until the next meeting, which is February 11th. So it's our intention to adjourn again this public hearing and continue it to the next meeting. But in the meantime, invite folks who would like to add to the record to come and speak and give us your name and address and let us know what you're thinking.
Excuse me, can I go back to one of the slides of the layout of this here?
Sure.
Yeah, I think this is the one I want.
Okay?
Yeah, I spoke last week. I'm Matthew Brennisholtz from Pleasantville, and I've thought about both my comments and some of the others people have made. So I've got a couple additions, suggestions I'd like to make. First of all, the right turn lane, there's no real reason why that shouldn't be continued. You know, one of the questions is there were only going to be room for 5 cars on that. There's no reason that portion of Memorial Drive, it's labeled there, shouldn't be 2-lane all the way back to Memorial Plaza itself.
You
Which
mean
would
farther towards the
answer-
post office?
Well,
Towards Bedford Road.
right now, the
Past the
2-lane
curb cut.
portion, you know, right turn lane and
Yes.
a straight and left lane, that 2-lane part only comes back to about here.
Yes?
There's no real reason why it shouldn't be 2-lane all the way back to essentially what is now the entrance to the,
Or the exit, actually.
entrance to the slip lane. And that would solve a lot of the questions people had last week about, well, you know, this is
Gets
gonna get
packed up
really
there.
jammed up.
Mhm.
The other suggestion, or I'd like to see, is right now.
I wonder, Matt, if folks at home can't hear you if you don't have the mic, so, yeah.
Oh, that's true.
Well, like I said last week, or 2 weeks ago, I guess it was, parts of this I think are going to be, shall we say, put it mildly, underutilized. What I'd like to see is the Bosque, I think, is a good idea. But the area on there labeled as the plaza and the lawn, if that were a hard surface, a multi-use hard surface, you know, it doesn't have to be asphalt. It can be something nicer than that. It can be granite. It can be
Which is what's planned for
permeable
the plaza at the moment is intended to be a hard surface. The
Okay,
lawn obviously is
but-
grass.
But
The
nice,
lawn
not
also,
just concrete.
problem
Yeah.
with the lawn is when we use the Memorial Plaza as a civic space right now, it's for uses that would absolutely positively destroy a lawn.
Well,
which
it's
means
not-
you'd have to ban, you know, you couldn't use the lawn. It would no longer be a part of Pleasantville Day or the farmer's market or the
Well,
Halloween
the folks at Wagner Hodgson report that what's in the design and what would be in the spec is, I may have the terms wrong, but essentially structured soil. It's the same kind of underlayment and sort of engineered earth that is used in NFL football fields and the like.
Yeah, but
Um,
they're used seven
so-
times a year and then
So
fixed.
it's not
after
just
every
NFL
game.
football fields, but anyway,
Yeah,
here's
yeah, I
what
mean,
here's what
they're-
they have been assuring us,
Yeah.
and obviously all this needs to be vetted to be sure, but that the substrate that this grass would grow in is both extremely well planned to maximize plant growth, but also does not compact, and so the weight of traffic of pedestrians and even the passage of trucks doesn't compact the soil, which is what is usually the death knell of
All I
lawns.
can
So-
say to that is, I have never seen a piece of grass with heavy traffic that has survived that traffic.
Okay.
Especially not around here. Maybe in Southern California where the grass grows year-round,
Mm-hmm.
but around here, I've never seen a piece of grass
Okay,
with
point
heavy
taken.
traffic that survives.
Right.
Now, the porch, essentially the porch is there already. So what I'd like to see is next to the porch right now, there is some parking. Well, eliminate that parking and put in essentially 2 lanes that go out to Manville Road. 1 lane, a kiss and ride lane, you know, for dropping people off, picking people up. The other, a through traffic lane. Right now, there's a problem in the plaza where people, there's nowhere to stop when you want to wait for someone to get off the train. So you just stop in the middle of the travel lane and block things up. That could just be ordinary asphalt, and then at the end where it meets Manville, it could have a right turn lane, right turn
You mean
only
kind of at the
sign.
exit point that currently exists with the
Yes.
slip lane?
Yeah.
So let me just say, the grant we got for $1.25 million from the state, it says, as Nicole mentioned, it's federal money administered by the state, is money specifically focused on pedestrian improvements, and the closing of that slip lane is a piece of that pedestrian improvement plan.
Oh, yeah, I'm not
So,
arguing
yeah.
with closing the slip lane. This would not be a slip lane. It would come out, it'd
on
be
the other side.
perpendicular, it would have a stop sign, it would have a right
But you
turn
mean
only
at the
sign.
same exit point near the arrival of the
Well, it would
bridge?
have about the same exit point, but
Right.
people would.
Here,
No,
right?
No,
He means up top.
No.
he means at the exit of the slip lane.
So that sort of between the porch and the plaza lawn line,
Have a
No,
driveway.
straight
the
up.
porch is already there, it's already grass, it's already there. What I'm talking about is this area here,
Right.
Oh.
and then there'd be a stop sign here, and presumably a right turn only sign. That's for the traffic engineers to design, but I would
Okay.
automatically assume there'd be a right turn only sign there. With that exit there, this exit could then be eliminated. It would no longer be necessary. And this could be put in there whether, even if you decide, let me go back to the microphone.
Yeah.
Even if it's decided to keep the plaza and keep the lawn, that through traffic going straight ahead with the through lane and the drop-off pickup lane could be done anyway. That without interfering with that as a civic space. There's one more comment. Let me go to the other. Okay.
So
On
just to
this-
help folks as they look at that, the
Okay.
bright white are the existing crosswalks, and it's a little harder to see. The dark ones are the new crosswalks that replace what you see in bright white.
Okay, let's see,
So-
this,
Here, you can use the
this,
landmark.
this
Use this mic.
crosswalk here,
Matt, you got to use the mic here.
Mike.
There you go.
okay.
Just pick it up.
Yeah, there you go.
He's too tall for it. Yeah.
Can you pick it up?
Right there at the corner of Washington and Wheeler,
That
yes, it's
offset- that
diagonal,
offset
but you
corner, yeah.
hardly notice it's diagonal, especially with the four-way pedestrian stop. I don't really see that as a problem, but
So I got to say, I see it as a very big problem, and I
Okay.
see it every day, but different strokes for different folks.
this one up here, that one up there at the corner of, I think that's Tompkins,
It
I
is.
see as a much bigger problem.
I agree, it's a
And
big
I
problem.
guess you're showing it here as being made perpendicular, which
Right.
I think is essential. I
With
think
the
that's
bump outs
important.
there to
Yeah.
shorten the distance, right?
Right.
Yeah, that long diagonal now,
It's
that
bad.
especially since,
It's bad.
that's as bad as a slip lane.
Yeah, right. All right, is that it, Matt?
Yeah, I think those are my
Okay.
comments.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Other speakers? Welcome.
Thank you. Jack Tobin, I'm a resident of the village. I was prompted to come here just by reading the Examiner last week when it came out, and I was somewhat surprised to see a lot of arguments against and an editorial against, in which it stated that the project probably has some supporters, but other than those on the village board, they're not banging down the doors of Village Hall. So I just wanted to kind of lend my banging down that I personally and a lot of folks are in support of the project. And with all due respect to Mr. Vanderschultz,
Thank you.
with all due respect to the gentleman here, I do not want to see a parking lot when I get off the train. Two other quick thoughts, and I'm sure it's come up, but I wanted to know if the relocation of the gazebo has been discussed as part of this project, because that seems like a place to recover a half a dozen parking spots perhaps, and it seems a little underutilized where it is outside of certain events. And then lastly, I'm a little unclear as to where we actually are in this process as a whole, legally and politically. I think a lot of people, at least that I talked to, thought we were, although delayed 1 year, things were in process to break ground on this, so we were sort of surprised to see a lot of arguments against in this hearing. So thank you.
All right, thank you for that. So let me unpack that a little bit. First is, thank you for your comments about the Examiner article. I will say, having been here at that meeting, that I felt it was an incomplete explication of all that went on, although certainly there were plenty of people who spoke with opposition. So let me start with your last point first, which is we are in the publicly required State Environmental Quality Review Act public hearing process, where, among other things, we explore the potential impacts of the project, the means by which they have been mitigated, and ultimately make a determination that the project can go ahead, that it has no impact, that there are a whole series of options that can be resolved. So we're in that process, and we'll continue at least once more to the next meeting because of the parking discussion. But it is a legal requirement. It's not just a legal and procedural requirement. It's also an opportunity for folks to be heard. But I will say, and the examiner failed to say, that we've been in this process for a solid 2 years, and there are dozens and dozens of people who participated in the evolution of this, including the workshops that led to the programming that Nicole was describing. So none of that was included in the Examiner article. And as is often the case, folks appear at a public hearing when they are in opposition in smaller numbers than folks who think it's a good idea. So that's where we stand. I will say I think speak for all of us that we have all been a part of this project for a good long while and been a part of massaging it in various ways that we felt were positive for the community. There's been a huge amount of outreach to lots of other groups and to other members in the community. And what we have here is, I think, a consensus-oriented solution. That's different from saying everybody agrees, and that's different from saying everybody gets everything they wanted. But I do think that the board as a whole is obviously interested in all commentary, but a lot of what was said at the last meeting was not surprising, because honestly some of the arguments against it are arguments that we ourselves could make. If we could have everything we want, we would. We want more parking, we want more green space, we want better traffic, we want better pedestrian safety, we want a community that has a magnetic center, we want civic spaces that both look good, that enhance the appearance of our community, but even more importantly than that, as Nicole just described, build on the great strengths that already exist here. So there is an inevitable set of compromises, and as all of you know, when the budget numbers came back from our cost consultant, they were too high, and we did some value engineering with our landscape architects from Wagner Hodgson to bring the price down. All of those things are very much on our mind. As Nicole also mentioned, the loss of parking and the replacement of it elsewhere is also very much in our mind. But what I can say, having sat at this table for a good long while and having seen lots of moments in the history of all of this, we've had lots of good ideas, lots of enthusiasm for the idea of a project of this kind, but never the confluence of circumstances that made it possible. The confluence of circumstances that we confront now, thanks to the gods for having delivered them, are that we received a grant of $1.25 million for pedestrian improvements along Manville Road, which substantially pays for the cost of the Manville Road project with a Pleasantville component as well. That project closes the slip lane, and it produces, as was envisioned in a federally sponsored grant 10 years or more ago, the idea of a civic space at the end of the plaza, and the opportunity not only to create a space that would serve as a village green, but also take our war monuments and put them in an appropriately dignified place instead of their current location astride a traffic island. And at the same time, as you also know, we see some development in the downtown, including the buildings that have gone up at Toll Brothers, the one that is nearly finished on the Try and Buy site, and the project under discussion at planning right now, adjacent to the post office at 70 Memorial Plaza. All three of those projects, or certainly two of the three, rescue what had been nearly moribund sites in the village and what had ceased to become significant contribution to the tax base. Obviously, that wasn't the case for Try and Buy, but after Try and Buy left, new opportunities were presented and a new developer came in. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line is we have significant new tax revenues. We have some long-term debt that is soon to be retired. We have a federal grant of $1.25 million, and we have an enthusiastic community that has participated in this programming process vigorously over the last 2 years. So that combination of things leads us to a very long-winded answer to you, which is we're in the SECRA required public hearing. We want to know what people think. We may make changes based on what people do think, but you're sitting here before a board that thinks we're doing a good thing.
If I could also add, the delay in things has a lot to do with the state. This is really technically two projects. One is Manville Road reconstruction and redevelopment, which includes the slip lane, removal of the slip lane, and that's all part of that federal grant administered through the state, and we have a matching portion as well. The development of the plaza, which is growing out of that because now that opens up some space and we had to decide what to do with that space, is a separate project. And it's been recommended to us by our engineers and everybody, the state included, that we should do it in two phases, Manville Road first, the plaza second. And the state has an extreme vetting process for everything, for every engineering change, for when it goes out to bid, for every aspect of it. There was a huge application process to free up the money. The money was available for us and it was granted to us, but in order to make it payable to us, we have to go through a huge process, and we're still working through that. So the anticipated, hopeful breaking ground dates would be spring of 2020 for Manville Road and spring of 2021 or summer of 2021 to start working in earnest on the construction of the plaza. But the delay in the plaza project is in a lot of ways related to the fact that we're working through all the technical things you have to go through with the state to get going on the Manville Road project. So that's why.
Who's next?
Hi, Andrea Garbarini, 1 Carrick Circle, Pleasantville, New York. I know, our town is going through a new and exciting phase of expansion, and we all know that change is inevitable. And in order to keep the small town feel of this community, I think a downtown green space, and I know you guys have worked very hard at this, and I really appreciate it, it's an excellent idea. People move here because they appreciate a walkable community. This new proposal allows for safer movement of pedestrians. I mean, there's areas in our town right now where you cross the street and you're a little concerned if you're going to get across the other side. And I think that this will really make a difference. Right now, our downtown area is a parking lot. I mean, it really is, right where everything, intersects. And that area is really divided. I mean, that whole parking area separates, Wheeler from Washington. It just cuts everything up. And there's really not a flow right now. And I think what we're going to do is going to be wonderful. And also the war monuments. I mean, it's a nice place. It would be really nice to have them in a more easier accessible area where people can actually sit there and pay their respects. Or, it's really not in an ideal location right now at all. So I think this is great. I mean, also when you think about it, if anybody has gone and traveled overseas and has gone to Europe, I think we all appreciate the piazzas and the places where people gather. I mean, you go to Europe and you're like, this is so much nicer than, people sit down, they have tea, they have coffee, they have drinks, they exchange ideas. And I know that anyone who goes there just thinks that this is wonderful. And this is what we're hoping to see a little bit here, where there's an area where people can sit, exchange ideas. Maybe we can have movie nights. We can get Films on Purpose to do something like that. But whatever there is, I mean, I don't see any downside. Of course, there's a parking issue. We all know that. You guys have hired experts to evaluate this. This is not being done, haphazardly. It's being done very thoughtfully, and I appreciate it. And I think that it's going to really be a wonderful thing. And that's all I have to say. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Andrea.
Andrea.
Hi, my name is Samantha Hoover. I'm at 7 View Street. I'm lived in the town for about 4 years. I very much moved here because it is a walking town. I'm a city girl and did not want to just live in suburban sprawl. As a resident and personally, I think the green space would be a wonderful addition. I also wear another hat here that I'm a member of the Pedestrian Safety Committee. And so I just really wanted to get some clarity about the grant and what the stipulations of the grant are. I know that it was primarily for pedestrian safety, and then the green sort of came out of that. But I think what we wanted to be clear about is that pedestrian safety is the priority. Clearly, the green space is icing on the cake and will be really, I think, a wonderful addition to the center of town. But is that 1.4 million covering the entirety of both projects? Is that, I think that's, in some
No,
ways, just some
no.
clarity was needed
Right.
there.
Okay, so the general idea of these Manville Road street improvements, the changing of the crosswalks, the bump outs at the intersections, the closing of the slip lane, were generated a decade ago by a landscape firm for the city called RBA Group, part of a federal grant. Since then, the working drawings were done by our civil engineers Insight, and they were stapled in the corner and sat for years because we didn't have the money to do it. We applied at several points for grants, and with the assistance of Patty Dwyer, Eric's predecessor in the role of administrator, we were successful in getting the grant you referred to from New York State. Again, it's federal money administered by New York State, and it pays for a significant piece of the Manville Road project and for the closing of the slip lane. The original project called for about $1.25 million in state funds and a $750,000 match from the village for a total of a $2 million project. The preliminary estimates we have right now for that project, separate from the park, is more in the 2.75 million range. Is that fair to say, Eric?
It's actually come down. Just one point of clarification: we received approval to move some of the grant funding in the design stage to the construction stage. So
Right.
that federal state aid is actually 1.49.
Okay.
And it's because we're going to leave the monuments where they are. It's looking like we're in the 2.4 million dollar.
Okay, so that's for the Manville Road piece and the closing of the slip lane. At the completion of that project, the slip lane has been closed, the slip lane has been pulled away, and then the park project would follow. That is currently estimated at about $2 million.
Separately from.
Separate project that would
An
take place.
additional.
It's a related project, but at the moment, the logistics appear such that we would need to have one construction season for the Manville project. That finishes, and then another construction season for the park project.
Yeah, we cannot
So-
spend $1 of that grant money on the civic space.
Okay, so I think
Except-
that
except for
actually
the-
was really
except for the
not
removal.
clear. I was at the last meeting,
Yeah.
and I totally missed that. And
Okay.
I agree that the Examiner article was like, not the meeting I was at. I mean, I know there were plenty of people who voiced their concerns, but I felt people also voiced their support, and maybe
Yeah.
not enough, and partially that's why I came back tonight.
Thank you.
But I think it should be very clear going forward that those are two completely separate pieces, or two completely different pieces of pie, or different pie.
They are, other than the fact that the closing of the slip lane and the tearing up of that blacktop and the widening of the Memorial Plaza Road to 3 lanes with a right turn only lane
Right.
between Valvoline and the War Monuments is part of the grant.
Right, okay. But it's true that you could have done all the things that you're talking about and the closing the slip lane and then just kept it as a parking lot. I mean, that would have been an option, right?
Yes, except that we would
Not
have
a
to.
very
we'd have to-
ingenious
Well,
one,
we'd
I
have to
don't think.
change, we'd have created a dead end, so you'd have to have a different circulation. But
Right,
yes,
right,
you're
yeah,
right.
okay.
You're right, we could have
Okay.
done that.
So
I think part of the confusion, Sam, is because we have actually discussed these projects discreetly at most of the meetings that preceded this latest public hearing, but the secret process requires that we consider them together. So
Together,
I think that
right.
may be where the confusion came
Okay.
from. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's.
We
it's-
occasionally confuse ourselves.
can understand. It's a I know it's a complex thing and it's a domino effect kind
Yes,
of thing.
thank you.
Well, it makes sense
they're
to do
over-
these near each other, right? Once we
Right.
have all of this effort going on at one time, it's easier to get it all done.
I mean, they literally physically overlap. There's a
Right.
slip lane that's coming out that's going to turn
Totally
into a park.
understand.
So while the bulldozers are here, so to speak.
Right, right, right. So I
Not
think,
to
you know,
conjure up
in terms of the pedestrian committee, obviously, our primary concern is pedestrian safety and that this will improve circumstances and not make them, you know, make any more issues around pedestrian safety. I mean, hopefully you're cutting down the amount of cars that are going in and out of the parking lot, but, you know, there'll now be a different exit that's both the cars will be able to turn both right and left, is that right?
It's gonna be more regulated
So-
Yeah.
in
More
any-
regulated.
Right.
Right, the sort of suicide slip lane where you have to have 3 sets of eyes at any
Right,
given moment.
right.
That goes away. That's where
Right.
the core of this whole thing came from. That you don't have to look over your shoulder, watch the going over to Washington Avenue, plus the people that are going from over there to over here, plus the people that want to go straight, plus the people in the road. That's what it's really trying to
And
do.
in terms of the pedestrian safety dimension along Manville Road, since that's going through a state grant, they have their own criteria too for what qualifies as making, you know, they have a
That's
sort
safer, right.
Right.
of list
I know
of
you're talking
criteria.
about the
that we have
islands
to-
that will make them less long and have
Right.
them more
Reduce the
direct
distance,
and not
yeah.
done diagonals. Anyway, thank you for your hard work on this. I'm hoping that we'll have both a safer town and a more wonderful green to be hanging out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And while we're on that, did we get any, I mean, I know I wasn't at the last meeting, sorry, I was traveling. Did, part of this whole thing is also looking at getting rid of the double lights, right? Did
Well,
that
not
get-
to,
should I
the
not
state
even-
is coming to look at that.
Right, but that's a state issue, just so
I
everybody
don't
understands.
think double lights are going away, but there may be a change that will improve the problem.
You're
So-
talking about the lights at Washington, Wheeler.
Right, the
Right.
gotcha light near
Yeah.
the Dunkin' Donuts, which turns green and you go, but
Yeah.
yours is still red, which happened.
Separate
last-
issue,
last
but
week.
we're on it.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Tom Rooney. I live at 26 Hillview Drive, and I also was at the last month's meeting. If anybody wants to throw tomatoes, throw them now. I'm on the other side of the fence.
They're out of season, so you're
That's
all right.
good.
Yeah.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah.
All these new wonderful ideas and plans, and then everybody's agreeing to, they're great. And it sounds like it's great plans of where other people have come from, seen in their past towns. If it was so wonderful there, then why did you move? Pleasantville is Pleasantville, and it's been that way for the 68 years I've lived here. Now, the safety aspect is one thing. You do what you have to do, no question. But this green space, as others have indicated, is you have this grandiose plan that if you build it, they will come. Well, you build Roselle Park, they don't go. You build Soldiers and Sailors Field, it's used by the schools. My grandchildren now use it for the park, it's wonderful. There are other parks, there's Nona Park, nobody's ever sitting in there, or the one on the opposite side of the train station. So I really don't honestly see how in good faith you can spend our taxpayers' money of, I believe the figure was over $2 million, to build a space that may not have any impact other than now the DPW has one other park to take care of. But it'll be easy to mow the lawn because you're going to probably find out there's not going to be anyone on it. Now, there's two sides of every story. You heard theirs, this is mine. But there's a lot of people that share my opinion. They're just not here. So I'm asking the board if, when the appropriate time comes, when all these meetings are done and over, that the village votes on this. Not just you people sitting up there who are in the high places. You have your opinions. You have your prejudices, you have your good decisions, you have your bad decisions. But they're not with all the residents in mind. Because obviously, right here in the room, we're split. So I'm asking, what is the possibility of when you take this road to the end, not to make a pun, that there will be a vote, a public vote, and not just a board vote, that this project should go through. We're in a town where the taxes are ridiculous now. This is only going to spend more of the taxpayers' money that could have been put to things like the roads you can't even drive on in this village. Having nothing to do with parking, you can't drive on the roads. I mean, Washington Avenue is a joke. My street, Hillview Drive, you got to dodge the potholes and not hit the loose curbs that are just in the middle of the road every time the street cleaner comes. So I asked you, what is the possibility of having a vote about this project, the green space, not the safety aspect, the green space, which many think it's a waste of taxpayers' money.
So it is not our intention to have a public referendum on this. I'm happy to hear that suggestion, and we're happy to kick it around, but that's not our current intention.
May I ask why not?
We've gone through a pretty long process here and invited folks to come and join it, and have had an awful lot of feedback, both in terms of the workshops and in terms of the really large number of people that all of us talk to. So as you rightly pointed out, there are always going to be divisions, and there's hardly anything that we get to decide on that everybody would agree about. But I do feel as though we've had a pretty extensive public process, and this is part of it, and happy to hear your comments. And I was sort of glad you came back because I wanted to reach out to you about a separate matter. Churning butter in your trunk, you said, along our bumpy road. So
Yeah, I got some in the car because they came here.
okay. So at any rate, if you wouldn't mind taking my card and then reach out to me, I'm going to come and see exactly what you talk about, because we really, really, really work hard to be both responsible with taxpayers' money and also to make sure that our basic services are delivered. And clearly you feel like we've got our priorities wrong. And I don't feel like that's the case, having sat here for an awful lot of years. But it's our job to hear what folks say and to dig into it. And I offer to come visit and do just that.
I'll take you up on that.
Okay.
I mean, people have made suggestions or comments tonight about what's the big deal with the parking places? We don't need parking spaces. So what if we're losing 41 parking spaces there? But you particularly and others who live in the town, I mean, if you don't think we need more places for just us, the residents, and I say this not jokingly, I mean, it's a chore to go mail a letter at the post office because you can't get there from here. It's either the traffic because people are blocked, double parked in front of Starbucks, and that's a true statement. That's not just a hearsay. You can't get around them. You can blow the horn. They won't move. There's no police boots on the ground to do anything, which would help. You have people turning from the right lane to the left lane across double painted lines to go to a parking space, which I might say in the village of Briarcliff, there's great big signs that say you cannot cross the double yellow line to park a car, to park your car. There's all kinds of things. So, I mean, removing 41 parking spaces, saying that the project next to the post office is going to maybe yield some parking spaces for the residents, that's really a pipe dream, in my opinion. Maybe not yours, but it's mine.
Also, can I just
Sure.
interject on that subject? I can report that I myself, along with Eric Morrissey, have been in those conversations with that developer, and it isn't a pipe dream. So, and I will say, in my own modest defense, in all the years I've sat here, I've never delivered a pipe dream to anybody, and so I really
I'm
I really
not
want
going
you to know.
anywhere, so I'll see that.
You will, and I'm not going anywhere either. And
All right.
and maybe I'm coming to your house soon because I really want to see
All right.
the troubles you have on Hillview and elsewhere, and to talk further.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Mr.
Here's my
Chairman.
card
If you
there.
don't- if you don't mind,
Thank you.
I'd like to just address a couple of the things you said.
Sure, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
A lot of folks that have lived in this village for a very long time have commented both personally and by email, and also on you know you're from Pleasantville If webpage. And I really appreciate the loyalty and the friendships that people have developed. A lot of people don't live here anymore, but still remember it. So a lot of people still do live here. You still do live here. But they say things like, this is how Pleasantville is. It's always been this way. Let me tell you, if you look at any of the history books, and there are a lot of them about Pleasantville, this village has never always been anything. In 1907, Memorial Plaza was a field with a little dirt road going through it. At some point, they took out a big piece of rock in order to create a better roadway and parking spaces for cars, which were probably pretty new at the time, that it was a common thing for people to have a car. Later, there was a large project, and I saw a photo on that Facebook page, of the dedication of Memorial Plaza when they made it into a huge parking lot. They took out a field of high grass and made it a parking lot. And it was, I'm assuming there was opposition at the time. Some people probably hated it, and some people probably loved it, but it was a big change. In 1929, they built a school on a farm. It was a beautiful, bucolic farm with cows and whatever they grew, chickens, and they built a school. They built Clinton Street Hill from Sunnyside up to the school, up to Romer, through an apple orchard. In 1959, they dug a canyon to put the train tracks down. Look, that was the biggest project this village will ever see, way bigger than what we're proposing. And the comments on that Facebook page were, I was here, I remember, that was a great project. That was so incredible. The engineering was spectacular. These are the comments that I saw, that I read. Yeah. So there have been periods, also around 1930, they connected what was Rebecca Lane, which is now Manville Road down here in the middle of the village, up to Edgewood, which is now by the Christmas tree, which is now Manville Road. That's where Manville Road swings on an S-curve in front of Farrow's auto dealership or a gas station and over to the Christmas tree. That wasn't there. Rebecca Lane went all the way out to Bedford Road, and Edgewood went all the way out to Bedford Road, and Rebecca Lane came up and dead-ended just beyond where is Farrow's now. And they built a big connection through. And if you see any of these photos of downtown Pleasantville at that time, when they were doing this construction, Manville Road was dirt, just dirt. There was construction going on in front of what was then the Rome Theater, now it's the Jacob Burns Film Center. So we've gone through periods in this village of no major changes for periods of times, and then boom, big changes, some really big ones. Building a school, building roads, taking a grade level railroad and putting it down 40 feet, building up Bedford Road and covering up doorways to buildings in order to make the bridges pass over. So this is not a unique thing to the village.
No, of course not, and I understand that.
And I also want to comment on the parking. There was a space behind the post office that was owned by the Lane family, and it was Lane Plumbing, and it was privately owned. And I believe it was 2011, maybe wrong about the year, 10, 11, 12. This village bought that space, tore down the old barn and store building for plumbing, the plumbing supply building, and put in, I believe the number is 61 spaces, with the specific idea that it would, if we ever did this project in the middle of the village and made this a civic space, we'd be making up for 40 some odd parking spaces being lost with 61 parking spaces. So to answer your question, we already replaced them. We just replaced them 8 years too early, I suppose. Those parking spaces were not parking spaces for the village of Pleasantville until this village, with the foresight, knowing that parking was going to be an issue, bought a space and put in, I believe the number is 61 parking spaces. And with the new project that's going on over at The Rock, we're keeping our fingers crossed. We're in negotiations to pick up even more. We've got 18 spaces that we didn't used to own. We bought that last year, right down by the, what used to be Pizza Hut is now a new building, and right across the street from that, there's 18 spaces there. We are fiscally responsible. We have a 2% tax cap. We're not going to break it. We haven't broken it since the day it was implemented 6, 7 years ago.
Oh, we did once.
Did we break it once?
Yes.
Pardon me, I misspoke. But these are not unique. These are not unique issues to our time, to 2018 and 19 and 20. These are things that happen periodically, and we have to always move forward. In my view, we have to always move forward to improve our village, to keep our infrastructure up. If your road's not right, it should be right. I'm not disagreeing with you on that. But to move forward, to always improve. If you don't move ahead, you fall behind. And I am not going to sit at this desk and let this village fall behind while I sit here. That's all I can say.
Well, that being said, I cannot go back to 1920, but I can go back to 1959 and I watched that hole being dug, literally. I was on Vanderbilt Avenue, I lived there. Dirt road because of that project. And as a 9-year-old kid, it was fun. I walked across there when the workmen went home, stole blasting cats. Had fun with my brothers. But that being said, these were projects I'm not against change. I'm just against change of things that are not necessary for the village, in my opinion.
And you're entitled to your opinion.
I know.
I don't really mean to
Okay.
disparage that.
Somebody else may want to speak, but that's just one person's opinion, but I do share it with many of my neighbors who live on this street.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and reach out, Lynn will connect. Okay.
Hi, Jonathan Cunningham, 14 Tiger Lane. A couple points of clarification, I think. I was here at the last meeting. I think the estimate for the 2 projects was $4.25 million. Roughly, that might have changed a little bit. You guys also spent $350,000 on the lot over here for 18 spots. So you're up to about $4.5 million, assuming you bought those spots, mainly to help augment the loss of spots here, which makes sense.
350 sounds a little high. I'm not sure, but
It was 230.
230?
Yeah.
230? Okay.
But it's still 230.
You're still around $4.5 million plus or
No,
minus.
I'm just saying for the parking lot. It was
Yeah, yeah.
230.
Right, and we wouldn't necessarily accrete all of that over to this. We need parking anyway, right?
So knocking off the $1.5 million grant, you're down to about $3 million that the taxpayer's on the hook for, give or take.
2.5.
You do math different than I do, Steve, but I'd say $3 million
We're waiting
roughly.
on-
Whatever, close enough.
But, yeah.
Big numbers,
So,
for sure.
big numbers for sure. And that brings me to my point, which is if you had conducted, when I was at some of those meetings where you guys talked about the civic space, they were great. There were talks about fire features and water features. In fact, water features is the biggest thing that was on that word slide that you had, all of which had been cut out because of budgetary purposes. But if
But we don't know for sure. That could still be
okay,
true. Yeah.
so we're going to have water feature for $3 million. No, you're not going to.
You can-
So
Nobody's not in the
let's
plan.
not. Let's just be honest here. We're not going to have a water feature.
Yeah,
So,
we don't
but
know.
my
I mean,
point is,
some
if you
people
had
have
that
to-
meeting,
Jonathan, I think it's fair to say we will not have a fire pit.
yeah,
Whether we have a water feature is
no, we could have a
probably
hose.
up for discussion.
Okay, I got
Not
it.
necessarily that
But my
expensive.
point is, had you had those discussions were done, in my opinion, under the kind of guise that we had $1.5 million grant with $750,000 matching, so about a $2.25 million project. And I think
That did not include the park.
it was unclear what that included because it got conflated in those discussions.
I gotta say, I think, I recognize it's a complicated story, and let me also say, as you doubtless would agree,
Right.
The business of determining what kind of numbers you're going to get back in a public bid is an extremely frustrating process that we
No doubt.
remain mired in.
Right.
That said, there was certainly no intent, and I think we were really pretty clear in the evolution of this that these 2 projects were separate, and when we engaged both DOT to assist us in a reappraisal of the costs and a private cost analysis firm to help us with the park, we had public work sessions. Those documents were posted in our agenda. The Examiner wrote articles about them. So I get, yes, costs have increased. And in some cases, I mean, I can tell you that the first numbers we got back for the park in the context of a public bid was
you know,
Something on the order of $1.4 million in construction costs and $1.1 million in soft costs. So, I mean, these are just staggering.
that's your compressed grass.
No, so,
Just kidding.
no, because it's soft.
Because it's soft.
All right, continue, sir.
Anyway, so that's what I'm having a hard time getting my arms around. There's a $3 million taxpayer bill for green space ostensibly at the end of the plaza. And
So again, you're conflating it.
I am.
Piece of that goes-
It's a complicated project,
Okay,
and I agree.
but-
That includes the Manville.
But
You're right.
Your,
that
your
includes
goal
the
is to
Manville.
clarify it, so help clarify it. Right.
So 2.25. Well, okay, fine. So it's a lot of money for
No doubt.
for a park, and that is what I'm having a hard time getting my hands around, because part of the secret process, my understanding of it, and you're going to be able to argue with me because you know that my attention to detail on secret is big picture, not little picture, but my understanding is that you have to present the alternatives of what you could do with that money. And I know that along with something at Memorial Plaza, you only need to go to your Parks and Rec board to find out that there's a long list of big project demands at this village
So-
that have been requested for decades as well.
First off, the secret process does not require us to say, what else could we do with this money? That's a reasonable question to ask, perfectly reasonable, but it's not about secret.
Okay.
When secret asks you to review alternatives, it's an alternative use for a proposed development.
Oh,
So,
okay.
for example, I want to build a factory on a site that used to be a school, and secret says, well, hold it. You're asking for the right to do this, but are there other things that might be less impactful
Okay.
than what you propose?
Like I said, you would be much better at delivering to me the
Right.
details of secret versus
Yeah. So
my
I
big
just-
picture.
I
But
just
as a
wanna make-
community, we might want to ask what we could do for $3 million as opposed to this park. If it's not just a $750,000
Okay, but
matching
Jonathan,
grant.
Stop. You keep saying $3 million for the park. It's $2 million for the park.
And we
You're
may
only
be getting an
$50 million
additional
apart.
grant
So-
as well.
So,
Okay.
and as I have mentioned at a previous
It's my
meeting,
different math.
we have a.
I'm just
we have-
using the politics of the
Okay.
day. Just if I say enough, it'll be the reality. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
What are you?
Fake
Aren't you
news,
the
that's
guy
what
that
we
says
need.
if you beat on the numbers enough, eventually they submit
According
to
to the
you,
statistics.
to your.
no,
So
I let them say what they say.
we are cautiously optimistic that there will be another grant that we will achieve, but stay
I
tuned.
think that would be very helpful in this process if that other grant came through.
I agree with you.
It would help me get my hands around this because
it's a lot
I'm
of
not
money.
I'm not I'm
Nobody's
not
gonna deny it's a lot of money.
it's hard to argue with a park, honestly, but at the same time,
At what
$3
cost?
million, $2 million, whatever number you want to use, big numbers. I don't think we ever spent $2 million or $3 million on one or 1.5 projects in the 12 years I was on the board. So I do want to correct you, Joe, that because I was on the board when we bought the Lane lot, there was no conversation about it's going to replace parking at Memorial Plaza when we do the Memorial Plaza. It was purely an option to buy that lot because it gave us a lot of flexibility to influence the development, whether it is 70 Memorial or whatever, in the downtown area. So
So
it wasn't.
it wasn't, you're right, that's a piece of it, but it was not purely. I sat there, and Brian and I negotiated that purchase, and the addition of the parking was important, and the belief that.
The addition of the parking was
and
important,
that
but
it
it was not described as a substitute for lost parking that we were going to have.
Well, we hadn't
on
lost any at
Memorial.
that point. But, what I would say is, a bunch of people took us to task about why we bought that. So,
Yeah,
in
that's
our opinion.
some wondered. I don't remember
whatever.
being taken to task.
So,
but
I get your point, understood.
How much you pay for that lot?
$1 million.
$1 million.
A little over a million, 125, I think.
For
That's
60,
not-
for 60 parking
50.
spaces.
Yeah. So, again, I don't want to get into the weeds on different subjects.
Just saying.
Happy to do that, but in the context of the secret.
Money gets
Right.
spent for progress.
What's that?
Money gets spent for progress. You were on a board that spent money for progress.
Indeed.
That's all.
All right.
And
All
I'm
right.
not, and don't get me wrong. I'm not against progress. I just think that 2 million or 3 million, it will be eventually 3 million out of the taxpayer's pocket between the two projects, needs to be considered carefully.
Has been, will
Thank
be.
you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Let's let some people who didn't get a chance to talk last time speak too.
Hi, thank you. Ryan Lamberg on Washington. And just wanted to thank you for the leadership. I've been involved in this process back when the very initial stages. It's really nice to see it all come together. For someone who lives on Washington, I can't wait for all of this. We moved here in part really because of the walkability, but also in essence, and some people might not like the sound of this, but because of Pleasantville's potential. It felt like Pleasantville has a ton of potential when you start to look at the different areas around Jacob Burns that could be gardens, that the garden that people are talking about that people don't use. Granted, no one's going to use that space because it's either a walk through to the train station or it's got a couple benches in it. It's not designed like this place is going to be designed. So I certainly feel for those people that will hear the construction over the next few years, but I think the long-term vision and that type of vision that you're doing, I think sends a real message. What Pleasantville will look like when all this is done is the kind of place that people are looking for in the long-term vision of their families for, long time to come. So I really appreciate the vision and the work on this. Granted, it costs money. Everything costs money. But I think ultimately, when we're that town that is walkable, that is embracing many of the green elements, and for those that don't know, I'm part of Pleasantville Recycles and other green movement in the schools as well. And we're trying to push for this, and I think this is a great example of where this is headed. So I congratulate you and encourage you to move forward with this. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Other speakers?
Hi, Helen Mira, 3 Hayes Hill Road. Good evening. I have a few thoughts about this space. I enjoyed attending the meetings where we talked about possibilities. I do feel that they were not really geared to sharing not doing the planning, so it was really a positive move forward, but there wasn't really a forum until now, last 2 weeks ago, for discussing not doing it. Mm-hmm. Just a comment. I think the surfaces you consider should be multi-purpose. One idea might be to use the stuff that they make playgrounds from now, like from the ground-up sneakers, so that you can have different colors. It might look green. I'm all for real grass, but I'm also for something that's comfortable. Concrete, even brick pavers are not comfortable when you fall over. And I think it should be flexible use, so you could move the spaces around instead of it being, this is the lawn, this is the, whatever the thing's called, the plaza. And planning for the future, I know that a lot of people think that fire pits and water features are whimsical. And these come from a lot of people traveling to places which are often resorts, like a ski area. However, you can walk down through, downtown Philadelphia, and there are water fountains. And I think that we could plan for such a thing by having the infrastructure to do that, and at least bring water through the plaza, which you're probably planning on, but in such a way that it could be adapted to either a run-through splash thing or just a little fountain. Similarly, a fire pit could be built anytime. It doesn't have to be right now. Could even be on wheels. So also I'm a little concerned about the train pickup and how that traffic flow is going to work. So I was listening to Matthew Brenner-Schultz, but I'm not very keen on his idea of leaving the lanes in place next to what you're calling the porch, because I think that makes the plaza an island, and that wouldn't make it safe or a place to want to go to. I think it needs to be connected to more than just the war memorial. It would just be not easy or And I know that there are plans to put trees in. I encourage you to talk to the Conservation Advisory Council about those trees and what kinds of trees might work. Some that are in the plan now don't seem particularly suitable, so we'd be happy to work with people with that. And I also wonder if it's possible to do the the Manville Road traffic changes and then do a temporary setup of this area at the north end of the parking lot by cordoning off the area you plan to work on.
And see what happens.
And have some
Right.
events staged there, for example.
And just
Yeah.
you would have some surface put down where you move the slip lane or remove the slip lane and the pass-through, but then put up some kind of blockade or planters or whatever, just maybe for a month and see, is that going to work, or should it be smaller, should it be a different shape, should it be a diagonal cut from
So,
there?
further to that, the way it looks at the moment, I mean, we're starting to dig into logistics and impacts on parking, traffic, farm market, all those things. We're likely to have a one construction season that closes the slip lane and builds a sidewalk straight across there, and then we'll have to wait for the park to be built for another construction season, the result of which is just what you propose. We'll have this blank and problematic spot that we need to find a way to make useful in the interregnum. So that's definitely on the radar screen.
Okay, so the slip lane as you describe it is actually two lanes. The slip lane that comes from the Memorial parking lot
Yes.
on the right, and the one that comes from Memorial Plaza where they join.
Yes,
And both are required to be removed for the project.
both are
that
removed
entrance
because
to Manville
because
Road.
their exit disappears.
Right, there's no
Okay.
way for them
Right.
to go anywhere.
Right.
And then one thing I wanted to clarify when I think it was Samantha got up from the pedestrian committee and asked about exiting the parking lot, I believe you can only still turn right out of there, not left.
So at the moment, and I think the last analysis of this is yet to be done, the idea is that the exit from the commuter side of Memorial Plaza near the gazebo would allow a left and right turn. At the moment, it does not. And then the exit at the north end would be right turn only. If I got that right, Eric?
Correct.
So part of our goal was to reduce the number of people who end up having to go around the block to get back where they want to go. And as I may have mentioned at a previous meeting, this change is likely to change people's behavior about where they choose to park based on how they want to leave. So there's some variables attached to that, but one point that needs to be vetted further is whether it is realistic, as at the moment the traffic engineers believe it is, to allow a left or a right turn from the sort of midships exit from the commuter side. But that's the plan at the moment.
To respond to your question about the surfaces, so the civic space was redesigned to accommodate the farmers market. And part of the reason the plaza is the way that it is that the farmers market will have to drive their trucks through there. So they required a hard surface that they could also put their tents up on, and where they could function within the space. So just to explain
and it
that
also
the original
provides-
design was different.
It provides a hard surface where one could put up a tent, for example, for a temporary event or something of that kind. So
But that hard surface could still be a playground surface, surely, because the tents aren't.
The problem the farm market has is, stuff gets dropped and squished and tomatoes get stepped on and they essentially need to hose it off. So
I still don't
whatever,
see an issue.
up
Okay.
for grabs for sure.
And now I lost my train of thought, but thank you.
Sorry about that.
There was something else. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Helen.
Well, anybody who has something to say that they don't manage to say at one of these meetings is welcome to email any of us as well, and we
And
will
it'll be added
distribute
to
it
the
to the
record.
rest of
Yeah.
us, and it'll be added to the record. Yeah.
Welcome, Mr. Russell.
Good evening. Peter Russell from 114 Ashland Avenue. It seems to me that there's been a lot of discussion and not enough recollection that a lot of this process started with the update of the comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan focused on the downtown business area. And a couple of people have spoken about the importance of taxes an important element of our taxes are the commercial base, which I know you're trying to reinforce in many ways. So how does that happen with this space?
The reinforcement of the commercial tax?
So
Yeah.
what I wanted to say, yes, and why is it important for the business community? I'm not a local business person here, but I have over the last 10 years participated a lot with the Pleasantville Chamber of Commerce and others who were thinking about what would help the downtown of Pleasantville be an attractive business destination to pull other people in. And I think most of us recognize that as much as local trade for the businesses here is important, it's also important that our businesses be able to attract people from a wide range, from our market basin. One of the ways that happens is getting beyond people just driving through town or people kind of grabbing and go, Starbucks coffee or whatever. So we recognize that one of the important elements would be to help transform at least a part of Memorial Plaza to be a gathering place that would encourage shopping visitors to linger, to walk from one place to another, to go to a restaurant, to go to shops, to go to the films or whatever. And I think this space has a really good chance of helping make that happen. I think that really is part of a vision which we've heard from some people here tonight that shows that it's important not just for the residents and for the commuters, but for our business community. And then I have just two questions that maybe y'all could answer. And I think it would help put some of the other issues in proportion. If we're giving up 41 parking spaces, those 41 are what proportion of all of the parking spaces controlled by the village?
I think we control, give or take, 500 parking spaces, is that?
With meters?
Yeah,
Well, we
meters
have
and
400 and some
permits.
meters, right?
Yeah.
And then
We have-
probably more than 500, maybe 600? Yeah. I mean, we
So-
have those numbers, I don't have them right in front of me,
So
but
maybe 8%, 5%?
something like that,
That's
yes.
on lots,
Certainly.
not including streets. That's not street parking, that's lot.
Yeah,
parking
will
lot.
that include meters
Yeah,
and
I
lots?
would call all parking.
Yeah.
In addition, I think it's important to recognize that there are private parking spaces. There are some people downtown who rent spaces to commuters and others. The second question would be, what are the square feet in this new little green space? And how do that number of square feet compare to all of the space we give to parking downtown?
How
It's
is
a-
it in
it's a-
proportion?
it's a-
Yes.
A tiny
Small.
percentage.
Very
The whole
small.
thing's
1%? Half a percent?
I'd be winging it to say that, but it is a tiny percent.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I mean, I think it's worth also noting, and further to comments Joe had made about change, is that I see this in my day job where I work on projects that engage planning. That's not my particular piece of it, but at colleges. And over a long period of time, public space, green space, and social amenities get chipped away by the need to accommodate cars. Welcome, sir.
Welcome. Wade Bendis, 86 West Gore Ave. Been a resident of Pleasantville for 16 years, 17 years? A lot of years. Seen a lot come and go. Nicole, thank you for the presentation at the beginning. It was enlightening to see all the thought and planning that's gone into this. Joe, thank you for the history lesson on the town.
A lot of
Learned a
great
lot of
books
things
out
to
there. A couple of our historians in the village have written
Yeah.
some really good books.
Stephen and Peter, thank you for the math lesson. I appreciated that as well. But coming back to Joe's comments, he talked a lot about the change that Pleasantville has seen over the years, and I think we can all agree that change that has come through, whether it was a hayfield here, or an orchard, or a pasture, or a farm, being converted into public spaces, all makes sense to me. I think we can all agree those are good ideas. And whether it's a $3 million project or a $2 million project, let me conflate those numbers and let's just suggest maybe it's going to be closer to 32 by the time we're done.
No.
But
Let the record show.
I think, as a resident, who's been here and who loves this town dearly, I've got 5 kids that are coming up through it. I've got a lot invested in this community, and I want everything for my kids that this community can provide. I take exception to when we're discussing this in a public forum, referring to the project as we are going to be, we will, we have, as though it's a fait accompli, as though the voices in this room don't get a chance to speak about it. You know, I'm a working guy. I commute 3 hours every day, an hour and a half back and forth. I don't necessarily have the time to come here. And I had an open mind at the beginning of this whole process. I think it's great to create green spaces. I think it's great to create places where we can come together as a community and thrive and do all those great things. I belong to the wonderful lodge over here on Manville. We do a lot of those things at the lodge. And I love that. It's one of the things I genuinely love about this community. But I just don't think that this project, at the end of the day, having had an open mind about it, as I've seen the plans come together and I've listened to the concerns, and I think the concerns are genuine and real, I don't think this project completes what it's set out to do. Sure, it creates a green spot, but I think it's going to create a lot of repercussions that we're not going to be able to recover from. You know, the traffic being one of them. I'm all for using funds that are available to improve pedestrian safety. I'm all for spending $230,000 to buy more parking spots, because if there's one thing this town needs, it's more parking. Wholeheartedly agreed on that. And if there's one thing it needs safer crossways. I can agree to the slip lane being a dangerous spot. I can't tell you how many times I myself have almost been in an accident because of somebody ripping through there as I come north, west, east, whatever direction that is. I guess it's east. Go east on Manville, taking my kids to school when cars just come flying out of there after they pick up their Starbucks coffee. But like I said, I've watched this from the outside. I wasn't here during all the planning. I've seen what's come along. I don't agree with it. I don't think it's a good idea. And it sounds to me, like I said, that it's a fait accompli amongst you. My wife tells me about a Facebook group. I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. I haven't seen the Facebook group, but she tells me there's an awful lot of people that are in that group. And I would suggest, you know, that have concerns about this project. I'd suggest, if you guys aren't already familiar with it, to take a look at it and consider it. But I mean, to have this be a fait accompli is, I think, a wrong step, a poor step for people that we trust to, you know, to lead. And we do. I think we trust you guys to go out and get the expert advice, to think through these things, to form the committees, you know, to get the community involvement and come forward with a plan. And then we take a look at the plan and we see it, and I don't think it works. I don't think it works.
So, did you finish? I just want to respond
Yeah,
a little bit.
yeah, go
Okay,
ahead,
so
please.
thank you for that, and I very much respect your thoughtful presentation of that. I did want to respond to the fait accompli thing, which isn't the first time we've heard that, in either tonight or in the course of this. So, to the extent that it's a fait accompli, what you're seeing here is the legal requirement to go through the State Environmental Quality Review Act process. Some of that is checking off the boxes, and some of that is a right-minded and honestly delivered effort to hear what people have to say. But I just don't want to leave you with the thought, or anyone else who hears this, with the belief that there's been no opportunity to do that up until now. So I can report that literally the idea of closing the slip lane and creating a public space at the end of Memorial Plaza was a plan drawn when Bernie was the mayor as part of a federal grant looking at intermodal transit. And the drawings were developed as part of a public process 7-8 years ago, and they've been stapled in the corner, and perfectly reasonable to think that people would have forgotten them because all that time had passed. But when the federal/state grant came about and the realization of this became imaginable, because it hitherto had not been, which is now 2 years ago, we began a really pretty extensive public process with, I want to say, these things have been presented in this room and on PCTV, I want to say a dozen or more times before we came to the point of this public hearing. And we've had many folks in this room participate in the process of it. I get that folks who have particular concerns or feel it's not the right thing to do would appear now and say that, and that's partly what we're here for. And believe me, I can speak for myself, but I think for my colleagues that we try to be as self-critical as we possibly can be, both to hear what folks have to say and to reconsider where we are if we should. But to the extent that it feels like a fait accompli, it's because this process has been going a long time and we really have rounded third base. Not in secret and not without the opportunity or outreach for folks to get involved. And so if it feels to folks that they've sort of gotten involved now because of this formal process, I understand why it would feel like a fait accompli, but I'm not sure how we would overcome the sense that anybody slotting into a process late in the game would feel that way. So I just want you to know.
And incidentally, it's all been posted on Facebook too. I mean, we don't have enough hours in the day to sort of respond to every comment, but we do. I do post on the village Facebook page, and I try and reach out to the
I
other.
don't know it, because I don't.
Yeah,
visit
well,
it.
Yeah, I
lucky
stay
for
away
you.
from
Maybe I should.
I'm with you.
I wouldn't recommend it necessarily.
I'm too concerned about the Russians and Facebook. Do you have to wear a tin hat when you get out?
Yeah.
Probably.
And just to that point too, we struggle with some of these things too. I have concerns about the traffic. There's concerns about the surfaces. Are they going to be impermeable? I mean, there's so many moving parts with this. I mean, we struggle with a lot
I
of
think
those
it's
same
great
questions.
to go through this great big long process over many years with lots of thought and lots of considerations and bringing in all the experts and just step back and go, we tried. It doesn't work. People don't want it. It doesn't work. It's perfectly fine to do that. I do that all the time in my job. I try to find the best solutions for my clients. And sometimes, you know what, they don't exist. And we have to say, it kind of is what it is. And let's move on. But, you know, one question I do have, and
Sure.
maybe you guys thought about this. Why don't we get in with the MTA and look at enclosing the track?
Oh my God, yes. You are preaching to the choir.
We've
Are
tried.
they against green spaces? I mean,
Where's Jonathan Cunningham? So instead of 6 million, how much money? 40 million. It's just.
So I can tell you.
but I think we
That'll
can get
get
them
to
to
your
fund
third
it.
We have sat with the MTA quite recently and at many points in this process and at many points over the last, how far back, Bernie, 30 years. The bottom line is, first off, the MTA is resource constrained at the moment and are only able to invest in projects that enhance their ridership or their operations. Essentially what they've said to us is, if you want to deck over the tracks, totally willing to have you do it, but it has to be done on our terms and it has to be approved by our engineers and you have to pay 100% of the cost and you have to pay for our supervision of it 24/7 while you build it. And then after they say that, and I don't say this to be critical because obviously they have significant concerns when you talk about building over a train line, the kicker is we've had discussions like this many times with many communities, and the batting average is exactly 0, except in a circumstance where the project generates significant new income, like putting a building on top of the tracks. So, I'm with you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Appreciate your
you.
thoughtful comments.
Hi, good evening. I'm Terry Conway, 16 Parkway Terrace in Pleasantville, and I'm here in full support of both projects. I think the Memorial Plaza development and civic space is fabulous, and I think that Manville Road certainly needs some pedestrian safety. For those who don't know, Parkway Terrace is at the Pace end of town. A lot of neighbors I spoke to, and they're also in favor of the project. They're not concerned about the relocation of the parking spaces because one of the reasons they're in Pleasantville is because it's a walking village, and they're taking part in, you know, the healthy benefits of walking to the train station. They are happy to see the safety updates along Manville Road. That's always difficult to maneuver. As for me, when I thought about this project, I think of the words to Joni Mitchell's song, "They paved paradise and they put up a parking lot." And that's what happened here in Memorial Plaza. So I think that right now is this fabulous opportunity. We have a grant, we have a board who's very engaged, and we can reclaim some of that green space, some of that paradise that Joni Mitchell spoke of, which is just simply green space, just community meeting space. Some of the best days that we have here in Pleasantville are days that we spend gathering in Memorial Plaza. It's Pleasantville Day, it's our farmers market every weekend. Our parades, our firemen's parades are fabulous, all ending there in our gathering space. So it would be really lovely, I think, to have that community gathering space every day there for people and for different activities. The people I've spoken to, my neighbors, they're very excited about both projects, and we just look forward to supporting the village as we go through the project. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else?
Hi, I'm Sonia Fujimori. I live at 35 Hillside Avenue in Pleasantville. I'm actually not a village resident. I'm part of the town of Mount Pleasant, but I am a parent with 2 children in the Pleasantville School District. I have a 6th grader and a 2nd grader, and I'm very much in favor of the project. I think it'll be a significant positive for the community in a lot of ways. But the thing I wanted to ask about or advocate for is for sort of thinking about how the space might be used, in particular by children or kids who are sort of at the tween teen kind of age, especially as my boys are coming into that time. And I don't know if they were part of the process at all. I know there was the open process to the community to give input, but I don't know if there's a way to reach out. I have my own thoughts about how what kind of space might work well for them, but I don't,
Well, we'd be happy to have those. If you want to send that along to any of us, that'd be great.
Okay.
We had someone who visited, I think, in the last hearing who said that at the present time, the goal you described is achieved by people climbing the bike enclosure.
Yes, I heard that. Yes, and I did.
So I'm not sure we're in a position to ratify that. Maybe we can do better. So.
Maybe
Yeah, I mean,
a
I would
climbing
argue-
device of some sort, though.
Yeah.
I Phil might be a good person. Phil Myrick might be a good person to talk about that with too, because of the work that he does. But he's also got 2 tweens,
Oh, yeah.
and so I think is sympathetic.
Well, I believe
to,
he was the one who admitted to his son climbing
I
the
think
bike.
there were
I
2
think
people who
you're right.
admitted to it, actually. Yeah, he was
There,
one of them.
2 things in mind. There's Pearson Point Park, which I think someone else had mentioned over in Terrytown, which for me
Yeah, the
is
water
like
park.
an ideal park. I mean, the waterfront, of course, makes it so beautiful, but it
Yeah.
has
Well, we
many-
have the sawmill.
And when it rains, it floods it.
Yeah.
That's our riverfront.
We need to take advantage of the sawmill, but that's a whole nother
Yeah.
project, a
Yeah.
whole nother day.
I think that sort of exemplifies different garden rooms. It has a really nice sort of proscenium kind of stage with a stepped area up to the stage, but those steps become seating for people just to hang out when there's not being used as a stage. And the other thing I think about is even just that very small patch of playground at the middle school actually gets a fair amount of use, whether it's on a farmer's market day when we're over there, or just for the middle schoolers, because there really is a lack of gathering spaces for
For that
kids
age
of that
group.
age
Yeah.
group,
Yeah.
and they really have a need for it. So even that small of a space, but in this larger civic space, I think would be a welcoming gesture towards that age group. So.
It's an
Thank you.
interesting thought.
Much
Thank you.
appreciated.
Great, thank you.
All right, other speakers? So let me remind you that what we're going to do now is adjourn the public hearing but not close it. Did you have something further to say, Helen?
Yeah, I remember.
Okay, sorry.
Excellent.
Don't talk to me.
All right.
One of the things that we need to pay attention to going forward are greenhouse gas emissions. And one of the things that happens down in the station parking lot is a huge amount of idling when people are picking people up. So there is a Westchester County law which is you're not allowed to idle for more than 3 minutes. Some modern cars switch off anyway,
Right.
but not all do. But whatever we build, you don't want to put that station pickup right next to where people are sitting, because that would just be aggravating the situation. But we also need to find a way to remind people not to idle.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
No idling sign?
All right, so unless there's someone else who wanted to speak, Richard? Okay.
Richard Murden, 128 Washington Avenue. I just wanted to touch real quick. I said last week or 2 weeks ago that I support this project. I have no problems with the civic space. I think it's a good idea. One concern is is the gazebo. I know somebody mentioned it once before.
Yeah.
Is that going to be included in this project? Or is it still going to kind of stand on its own
So.
off-site where it doesn't
Right,
really get used?
It's going to stay where it is for the
Okay.
moment. It's not movable. If we wanted a gazebo elsewhere, I think we just have to start over. It's not the kind of thing that's easily movable. It's
Right, I mean, I know it's,
Yeah.
it's the icon
It's a
of
concrete thing.
of
yeah.
Pleasantville,
So,
but it's a shame that it's not then
Yeah. I mean,
included in this space.
I will say
because-
it's as you rightly point out, infrequently used, and when it is, I mean, years back, the fire department band used to have concerts there, and folks had to move their lawn chairs to let commuters out, and it was an awkward circumstance. So, yes, I think you rightly point out an issue, but at the moment, that's not on the radar screen. It would stay where it is.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, it's just, like I
Okay.
said, that's it. It just,
yeah.
Good point.
Thank you.
It's a shame to lose,
Yeah.
to not use what we have.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so is there a motion to adjourn the public hearing to our next meeting, February 11?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye, all right.
Aye. Thanks for staying
Back
late,
in 2
everybody.
weeks,
We
we hope to
appreciate
have
you
the
for
parking study in
coming.
May. All right. If we can, we've held up Henry here, who we need to talk to, and are you still with us, Henry? All right, we got to run through our resolutions, and then we're to you. All right. We go to the resolutions, number 10, Nicole.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble calling them up.
You might have to go to the public site on the webpage. I didn't get them on
right.
Nova's agenda this month. I don't know why.
Morgan,
All right.
Maybe, I don't know.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves Mercy College Occupational Therapy Program students Kevin Gibson and Jessica Bedoya as unpaid interns at the Clinton Street Senior Center for a period of 7 weeks starting February 6, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
Very good news. Thank you, Kevin and Jessica. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion approved. Number 11, Steve.
I gotta get back there. Yeah, Novus is weird.
Here.
I got it.
Can't get it.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the parade permit application from the Pleasantville Volunteer Fire Department to conduct a parade on Friday, May 31st, 2019. And be it further resolved that the village police chief has the authority to cancel the event due to adverse weather conditions or other safety concerns. And the permit is attached.
Is there a second?
Second.
One of the great days of the year, the fire department parade. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Mark your calendars, May 31. Number 12, Joe.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby approves the following new hire appointments effective January 22nd, 2019. Andrea Bush as a recreation attendant, part-time, available at $65 per hour, and Kimra Peer, recreation attendant, part-time, available at $50 per hour.
Is there a second?
Second.
Andrea will be part of the Storytime program, Kimra, the after-school BRS program. This is all within our budget. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. David, 13.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the promotion of Mary Petry Gerlanc to Senior Office Assistant, Automated Systems, Job Code 0751-01, CSEB Wage Group 7, Step 1. Annual salary $62,459 effective February 11, 2019.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's one of those odd moments when one goes home to celebrate a promotion to have become 0751-01. Delighted to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Thank you, Civil Service, for your gobbledygook. Nicole, number 14.
Resolved that the following budget amendments are hereby approved as listed below in the amount of $18,238 for judgments and claims for tax certs. It's Generation 3 properties. $4,355 going to Recreation Administration sick accrual payout, retirement payout for Linda Belfato. $12,403 recreation administration vacation accrual payout, same thing, a retirement payout. Increased revenue and expense general fund, the amount of $7,225. State court facilities, and that is for a bullet-resistant door.
Where's that going to be?
Is there a
was
second?
it with,
At the court,
Second.
court office,
Second.
they
Okay.
received a state grant.
Where's
Right.
the court office?
On the third floor.
Third
Third
floor.
floor.
Oh, okay.
At the clerk.
All right, is
All
that, we
right.
got a second? Did we get a second?
We did.
yes.
All right, any comments or questions, aside from the one just asked? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Number 15, Steve.
Resolved that pre-check register dated let me try that again. Resolved that the pre-check register dated January 28th, 2019, covering check numbers 92188 to 992285 is hereby approved as listed below. From the general fund, the water fund, the capital fund, the refuse fund, and the trust fund, a total of $380,425.10.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions on the check register? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion approved. Joe, 16.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the minutes from the village board meeting on January 14, 2019. Minutes attached.
Is there a second?
Second.
Comments or questions, comments or corrections to the minutes? Let me remind folks that one of the happy moments in that meeting, the meeting of January 14, is that we had a swearing-in ceremony for a new police officer, Jesus Bengura. He will be starting, he has already started now at the Westchester County Police Academy, and we look forward to his graduating from the academy and joining our force. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. David, 17.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby adopts the village purchasing policy, which is attached.
Is there a second?
Second.
Eric,
Yes.
is this,
So this has always existed. We made some amendments to incorporate a kind of a workflow approval process. So those of us in the administration can approve bids and purchase orders and the like to review and approve. We also had to include some language about the Iran divestment, which is required by New York State, and also had to include a sexual harassment policy for village contractors, also required by New York State.
all right. Pleased to think that we will be careful about divesting ourselves from anything associated with Iran.
Correct.
Comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion approved. 18, Nicole. Yeah, Nicole.
Sorry. All right, oops, I gotta get my mic. Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby approves the designation of the Village of Pleasantville Planning Commission as lead agency for the 70 Memorial Plaza Development Project.
Is there a second?
Second.
So the 70 Memorial Plaza Development Project is the project that is before the Planning Commission right now, and right next to the post office. The project has not yet been approved in planning, but they have a permit to demolish the existing buildings, which has now been done. That was the building on top of the rock and the former CrossFit building behind it. And as you have perhaps noticed, they are chipping away at the rock to bring it down to grade. At the point at which the project is approved by planning, they will be digging below grade for 2 levels of underground parking, and then building a 4-story building in that location with retail on the first floor, apartments above. And Planning Commission, per this resolution, would become the lead agency. Comments, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved.
20?
Steve,
We're on 20, right?
we are.
Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to enter into an agreement with the town of Mount Pleasant for the purpose of cooperative bidding for highway construction materials.
Is there a second?
Second.
I think we skipped one,
did?
19.
We did,
Mhm.
I'll do 19 then.
I thought we were on 20. Yeah, we did skip 19. All right.
I'll do 19.
Joel did.
Okay, so we're doing them out of order, but number 20, approval agreement, Town of Mount Pleasant for highway construction materials, as we have in the past.
Correct.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Joe, back to number 19.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village clerk to advertise for bid for camp transportation for summer 2019 Village Day camps.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Now we're at 21.
Resolved, the Board of Trustees has reviewed the account of unpaid taxes for fiscal year end 2019 as presented by the village treasurer and certifies that the accounts in the tax roll have been compared and found to be correct in the total amount of taxes unpaid. Attachments include the specifics.
Is there a second?
Second.
Eight pages, totaling $253,117.49 in unpaid taxes, which is a bad way to borrow money because it's an expensive penalty.
I got a question about these. Are these cumulative? In other words, they're not just December's non-payments. They are December's, perhaps last April's, and they're cumulative by property.
Is it total
It's the
to
current fiscal
Total
year
outstanding amount.
for the current tax year.
Is it
Only
the-
for the current tax year?
Yes.
Not the total outstanding.
No.
Okay.
Okay,
And each member of
Property,
the board
each-
will be signing the form that you see online just to certify it.
understood. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Number 22.
Hold on.
Hold on there.
Hold on.
This night's
You had to
flying
go
by
mucking
already.
around in the
Take
details.
more in. No, this is broken. It's coming. You see, I'm building suspense. It's early, right?
Thank you. Resolved that the Board of Trustees hereby authorizes the village administrator to enter into an agreement with Starnet Emergency Services to provide standby ambulance services on Saturday, July 13th, 2019 for the 2019 Pleasantville Music Festival.
Is there a second?
Second.
So is Starnet the corporate name of Westchester EMS?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same guys we had last year.
Right, and they've
great
done a
job.
great job for us, and they do a great job both providing the fly car service in the town of Mount Pleasant that serves us, as well as a backup for Pleasantville Volunteer Ambulance Corps. So,
Yep.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. There being no further business, fair to say,
Yes,
is there a motion to go into executive session
so moved.
on matters of
Oh.
on personnel and real
I
property?
think
Jumping the gun there.
I've done this.
You're too enthusiastic. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. All right.
Aye.